Welcome to Wellness Wednesdays with Michelle. I'm your host, Michelle Hart, your #1 nutritionist and fat loss specialist. This show is all about how to eat, move, and live to have a fit and healthy life. Today's topic is how to eat, how to think, and feel your way to your best body. Now, you're wondering who this is here. This is my friend, Katharina, and she's here to share a story, but really, here's the thing. We all know to get your best body, you need to eat a proper diet and exercise regularly, right? What happens if you have emotional eating and self-sabotage that is stopping you from actually eating the way you know you need to and exercising the way you do? Well, we've had our struggles. I know for me, it was, I felt like to have my best body, I had to starve myself to do it. And that just led me to a path of osteoporosis and amenorrhea. And my journey was reversing all that. But we're here today to learn from an expert personal trainer, Katharina. And Katharina is going to share her personal story with her struggles with emotional eating and the pain that she had during it, and then the one thing that got her through it. So here we're going to learn from Katharina. So Katharina, tell the audience what you do and who you are.
Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you for having this opportunity to play with you today, because that's really how I see it. When I first met Michelle, we were creating candles in the local Kelowna candle factory. And we just hit it off and just knew that our kindred spirits wanted to play together. And little did we know at the time that we had so much in common. You could tell that we, have healthy, vibrant bodies, but behind that, there was so much story of what we've come through that is very similar, and just the ways that we've each navigated, and just having a soul sister to connect with and to grow with is a real beautiful treat. So thank you for that. I'm new to Kelowna and picked up my business from Calgary, and had a established fitness training community there, and basically relied on word of mouth and referrals, and picked up and came to Kelowna, which twist my arm, I know is a real treat. But starting over, and I started, I went through a lot of emotional stuff in the last 3 years with infertility and relationship breakdown, and becoming an immediate stepmom to a child who just lost her mom, and a new environment, leaving my family and leaving my nest, so to speak. And I believe that's all part of this evolution. Now, coming back to why I'm telling this part of it, is that it's the emotional aspect of life that really can sidetrack our health and wellness, right? And it's not easy terrain to navigate. And what I've learned on my journey from being anorexic and having all this way of stuffing down my emotions is that now that I'm going through emotional stuff in life, because that's not going to stop, I at least now have the tools to be able to navigate. So my journey long ago, I was always kind of a thin child. Like, I didn't ever think about, other than I wanted to gain some weight because I wanted to wear those skinny jeans that everybody else in grade 6 could wear, and I had to wear 2 pairs of shorts underneath to even try to get that. So I used to be able to eat, pretty much what I wanted to, but what I didn't know until I was an adult is that I had these patterns of suppressing my emotions because I didn't know how to feel. I didn't really have great role models. My parents came from the war. They came through a really, really difficult time in life, and they didn't have anyone to help them through that. So when you think about, we can't blame ourselves, first of all. I think that's the biggest piece. There's so much self-judgment and so much blame and shame and guilt around the ways that we feel. And for me, whenever I felt uncomfortable, I would just go to the fridge, to the cupboard, to the fridge, to the cupboard, to the fridge, to the cupboard. And I would eat until I was so full that sensation became comfortable for me in the way that it was familiar. So those familiar experiences, even though we don't want them or they're not healthy for us, we often go to them because that's our way of navigating trauma or difficult emotions that we don't know what to do with. So for me.
Yeah, so I was just thinking that's a really good start, this journey that you're on. So basically, what I hear from you is you want to look a certain way, and so you didn't really know how to do that, but you really wanted it. And then what you found yourself was you had these emotional turmoil, like in your body, and it's like, okay, well, what's this? What do I do with it? We all kind of felt that as kids, didn't we? And so I guess the way that you handled it was the fridge thing, going to the fridge and back. And did you find that that created like a habit that you had a hard time breaking, or just...
Yeah, well, it was an unconscious pattern at the time because I was young. And then it wasn't until I became...
How old?
How old was I? I was
Yeah.
anywhere from like when I was old enough to go to the fridge or the cupboard.
Okay.
Okay. And then until I became a teenager, and I was a late bloomer, and then I came back to school after one summer, and all of a sudden I had boobs, and somehow that was a new, that's what the message I was getting was people only liked me for my body, because all of a sudden, nothing had changed as far as who I was, but there was all this attention. So I became body focused. And then that was when I started to try to control, which a lot of eating disorders are. It's a way of being able to control. So I lost, I was 98 pounds. I was really thin. And then I lost my period. And it really was, so then, I come through that as a teenager. I end up putting some weight back on, and I get my period back. But I got my period back, I went on the pill, and it wasn't until like 11 years later I went off the pill, and my period went away because it never really got regulated. And I was going through a lot of emotional stuff at that time. So when I started so I became a fitness trainer because I loved fitness and being healthy, thought I'd love to help other people do the same. And then I realized one day, as I was going through all of this, like anxiety, hormonal imbalances, amenorrhea, which is the lack of period, and I had mercury toxicity, I had all this stuff going on. And what I realized was that I hadn't really solved the underlying problems at hand.
Can I just stop for a second? Mercury toxicity, where did that come from?
Well, you see, mercury can come from amalgamums in your cavities. It can come from fish, right. Other environmental toxins. However, I did eat a lot of fish at the time, but I was constipated.
How did you know you had heavy metal toxicity?
I tested. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I went to a functional medicine doctor. I was very high.
What made you think you had heavy metal toxicity? What brought you to that?
Well,
Because I'm curious.
Yeah. Well, I came to a place where I wasn't feeling well, and even though I was eating and moving the way that I was helping everybody else to do,
right.
I realized, I'm not thinking and feeling in alignment in a way that's going to get me to the person that I want to be. And so that was when I started seeking help.
Okay.
And one of those ways was, okay, I'm going to do some testing and see some of these things that are showing up. But I have to say that part of that healing that mercury toxicity, when I went back for my second test, the doctor said, what have you been doing? Because I created this meditation, which is now called the flow meditation, where I went through the body and touched different parts of my body and only expressed the gratitude and appreciation of whatever that part was. And I moved through, and it shifted so quickly. The way I felt in my body shifted so rapidly, because there wasn't that self-judgment, that self-blame, but also, the emotions, there wasn't like a right or wrong way to feel.
Katharina, that's like extraordinary. Who at this age would think of doing what she did to fix herself? That is very like high level thinking. Where did you even learn that?
Well,
That's
I started,
amazing.
I started my sort of spiritual journey, so to speak, in my late 20s. I was going through kind of a difficult time, just in relationship, and kind of just, it got me into desiring something more, that there's something more, there's something deeper, there's something more meaningful in life. And so by doing so, that was when I started to explore and experiment with myself. And when I experienced that healing within my body from my meditations, knowing that it was only shifting the perspective, that it was something that would be helpful for other people. So it was when I went and recorded it. I created some CDs.
Wow.
And that was, 12, 15 years ago or something.
Wow.
Like that. Yeah. Oh. So, but what I really came to recognize is that I went through a divorce in my 30s, and that was when I really healed my relationship with food. And it was, my marriage was falling apart. There was a lot of shame and guilt in that process. And I literally, the emotions, because I was forced, I created a catalytic experience for it to happen, right? I created an experience where my relationship was unsteady, and now I had to face it. And I had no way out. And I felt like I was going to die. And so I got help.
You felt like you were going to die?
Yeah, it was so overwhelming, the emotion.
Yeah, how does that feel when you're having that emotion? Like, did it feel like what we call about like the panic attacks, or
Felt like a panic attack.
were you having night sweats, or like tell me what this panic, tell me how that felt in your body, because you know there might be other people feeling the same way. It's really good to kind of understand this.
Yeah, it feels like you know, like you're going to vibrate off your, you know, your whole body. You look like you're just going like this, and nervous system on overload, totally wired and tired at the same time, can't sleep. And you know, even having a sip of coffee made me off the chart, and I lost a whole bunch of weight, and I felt awful. I just felt anxious. So anybody who's had anxiety or any kind of anxiety attacks, that's how it felt. And
how long did that go on?
Well, that would happen on and off, because as I stopped being anorexic, I still had an unhealthy relationship with food. So I go on binges, and
so it went from anorexia
to binges.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I would either eat and chew and spit out, or I would just like force myself to not allow myself to do that, and that would just mean I would eat till I was full, and you know, feel like crap for a few days. And so it was this cycle, and I noticed it started to happen when I was feeling anxious. And that was when I tied it to, when I was a kid, I used to do that. Oh, right. That was where I connected the dots.
Oh,
and then when I sought help for my divorce, and that person helped me to heal, like learn how to feel. I learned how to feel, like to know that these emotions are not who I am, and to actually just let them move through me, and however that wants to be. Because once they move through, then they're out, they're gone, right?
So would you consider, so we talked about you know, your journey, and then we talked about like how it felt when you were in it. And then the one thing, would you say, what would be the one thing that really was the breakthrough, was really looking at yourself from maybe a different perspective, and just seeing, like, just maybe explain a little bit about your breakthrough.
Yeah.
What really connected? How did you break through? Because that's pretty severe. I mean, where you were to where you are now. What was the one thing that really shifted for you? What made the biggest difference?
Yeah, and I would say, you know, by learning how to feel, I liken it to the idea of like jumping into a cloud, like it's off a cliff. Let's say I'm on the edge of a cliff. I can't see anything because there's a bed of cloud, and I'm so frightened, but I've now been through enough hard experiences, but at this point I hadn't, right? So at this point I hadn't, and I'm like, oh my God. And then I got the help, and I was getting somebody to help. It's like jumping into that and going, ah! And then all of a sudden you're on the ground already. It's like you had no idea that it was right there. And I feel like that's a breakthrough piece for me, was recognizing all the times that I have been through hard times, and thought, you know, at the time that it was unsurmountable, and realizing that this was no different. And that I'm always okay on the other side. And so just having the courage to take one step, and taking the courage to feel, and you know, okay, well, for example, if you're going through if you're having an experience in your life right now that is challenging, or just even thinking about it, you can feel it somewhere in your body. And by just bringing your awareness to that space without judgment, and you know, whatever the story is around it, and if we can release the story, that, because oftentimes what we think is actually not true, and thoughts become feelings, and feelings become actions, and of course that's going to sabotage whatever it is you're trying to create in your life. And if you're trying to lose weight, you're trying to get that body that you've always wanted, but all of a sudden these feelings become overwhelming, and then you go to the fridge, you go to the cupboard, or in some cases it's addiction, and there's all these ways that we have tried to deal with trauma. And so the first place is just start where you are. Don't go into blame and victim, and go and give yourself the grace that you would give anybody else. If they came to you and they were in need, give yourself that grace. And that's truly what helped me get through that time, was just, okay, I've got this. I now know how to feel. And guess what happened? I completely shifted my relationship with food. I've been told that you can't ever, once you're once you have an eating disorder, you always have an eating disorder.
So let me ask you a question. Was this a flip of the switch, or did it take some time? Or because when you first kind of thought, oh, maybe I should do this, how long did it take you to actually overcome it?
Well, at that point, because from being an anorexic as a teenager and then having this unhealthy relationship with food and doing the binging and all that stuff, literally the switch happened by feeling. So I went to the root of what was causing me to go to the fridge and the freezer or the cupboard. And that was that stuffing down of emotion, stuffing down, and just not knowing how to do that. And so how do you do that? You get support, right? You get support from a community of around you, that whether that's people who think like you or people that your family and friends, just having someone safe that you can speak to, and of course having somebody that's educated in how to help people through counseling or through therapy.
So you're suggesting that they do that is to reach out and ask for help.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
Because they can't really, it's hard to, when you're in it, to actually get through it sometimes.
Yeah.
And so I always think, like, why would you want to keep struggling? There are people here that can help, and Katharina obviously can help because she's gone through it. And now look at this woman. She's amazing. This girl, like, she is the picture of health. Not only that, she is the kindest, most nice person, very giving, and you can just feel her energy. It's so much, like, it's soft and it's free, and you just feel so good around her. So you are the walking, example of, like, health. And so I really wanted you on the show to share this, but I really want to go with some practical tips now.
Yeah.
So you broke through, you're so much better, you're helping other people. Maybe just give them 3 practical tips that they can start with right away. So what would be the first thing that they would do then? Just 3 steps.
Dealing with emotion.
Okay.
So that would be in relationship to dealing with emotion and how it affects the body?
Yeah, so breaking past their emotional eating and self-sabotage and actually get the body they want. So what would be 3
First of all,
practical
stop beating
tips?
yourself up for a pattern that keeps arising, because that only further perpetuates it, and that's when we're constantly in that vicious circle. So first of all, it's recognizing, okay, this is something that I'm struggling with, and I haven't been able to break the cycle. So that means, of course, doing something different that you haven't tried before, and it could be some simple things like taking 3 deep breaths before you sit down to eat a meal. That helps slow down your sympathetic nervous system. That helps you to digest your food better. And even like what my family does, my husband and daughter and I, we hold hands and we just say one thing we're grateful for that day.
Okay, so the first step, just to back it up a little bit, is first of all, recognize it and not beat yourself up. People beat us up all day. Why do we want to keep beating ourselves up? That's way too much. We have to stop beating ourselves up, all right? So that's the first step, is give yourself the grace that you would give to someone else. Like, this is self-love. So the first step is that. And the second step is you've actually given them a practical tool, which is take the deep breaths. You can see yourself moving in that direction. Take the deep breaths and really think about what you're doing. Am I on the right track?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so that's the second step, is to take a step back.
Yeah.
When you're in that moment.
Yes.
And
become the observer.
Okay.
Right? So when we are in it, it's so hard to know what to do, right? Because we're so caught in this like trauma pattern. And so it's just like, okay, how can I become, if you're in your house, how can I become the one at the ceiling looking down and seeing it and moving around and seeing it from a different space, a different angle, like just and be curious from a place of curiosity and sort of say, is that true? What it is that I'm believing right now, is that true? And how do I know that's true? That's some Byron Katie work. And just removing yourself from the situation, to be able to give yourself some space to just observe. Don't have to act on anything, just observe. And that might be enough just to get you out of it and get that energy moving in your body. And that energy is that motion, energy in motion. Right? So, and then just, if you feel something arise, just welcome it, really. It might be like, oh, anger, welcome. Yeah. Right? And when we move it and we allow it, it's there to teach us something. And it might be a trigger from the past. A lot of these things are just triggers from the past, and we're bringing it into the present moment. And sometimes we recognize there might be some transference on a person that we're with that reminds us of an experience from the past, or a feeling that we're having when we're around a person, and it's like, oh, I feel so insecure, I don't like this feeling, and why do I, and it might remind you of your best friend as a kid, and you we're jealous of them, or, you know, there's so many stories that we have going on in our head. So how can we, you know, remove ourselves from the story just to have a different perspective?
Okay, so step number 1 is stop beating yourself up and give yourself some grace. The step 2 is see yourself as the observer and watch yourself move into that, and stop yourself and just observe and go, oh, where's that feeling in my body, right? And then what's the third step?
And then the third step is, you know, and this all ties into, especially if you're somebody who's trying to lose weight or get into your fit body,
which is our audience.
Yes, which is our audience. Is that recognizing that, you know, the emotional body is part of that body, and that we need to recognize that it's not just how we eat and how we move, it's how we sleep and how we think and how we feel. And so that we're being as mindful of those pieces, right? Because all of that's going to affect our biome, which is our gut health. It's going to affect our hormones and our adrenals, and so it's not always about just throwing at our bodies what we think it needs to do, especially, you know, over exercising. And that's one thing I see, especially with women as they age. It's like their bodies are starting to shift. Maybe the things that you were doing aren't working as well anymore. And there's some imbalances happening, and there's some metabolic chaos going on. And so sometimes stepping back, another reason to step back, right? So, you know, Michelle's amazing at being able to help guide people with bringing their metabolic chaos back into order, and also to be able to support the nutrition so that you can actually, your digestion, right? If you're not digesting, then you're not able to assimilate all the nutrients, and you're affecting your metabolism. So, and then exercise, like that's one of the things is I created a no excuse workout, fitness anytime, anywhere, any place. And it's a powerful, it's what I use, and it's a 20-minute workout, and I do it 3 times a week.
I think our listeners would be very interested in that. So what I'll do is I'll link to that, because I know a lot of my clients and audience is looking for something simple that they can do at home that doesn't even require a lot of equipment, that it's like no excuse, go and do it. 20 minutes is really all you need anyway, because what you're doing is you're sending the signal to the body to build more muscle. And you know what? If not, you're going to lose muscle. And so that's the thing, is you do it now so you don't have to do it later. It's going to be a lot harder if you wait and do it later. You're going to be older. It's going to be difficult. Start now. Do not wait. No excuses.
Exactly.
So I will link to that. That's awesome.
Yeah. And then this also brought me to like all of this journey that we've been through, and for myself, this whole idea of body shame. And sometimes I'll tell people, like, I'm creating this program to help people feel at home in their bodies and overcome body shame, and, you know, this freedom from what they don't want anymore. And it's like this freedom from body shame and freedom from all this self-sabotage, so that they have the freedom to experience all these things in their life. So I also help women feel at home in their bodies, overcoming body shame. I have a program coming up in the next few months. So
I think we should talk about that. So let's talk about your program, because I know a lot of our audience is going to want to connect with you. So,
yeah. I'm excited to be launching this online program. Another way to be able to connect with my community and just people who are looking for ways to feel at home. And I know that most people have not felt at home in their bodies. Most women that I've talked to, I'm not saying men don't too, just with all of the societal pressures and our own pressure that we have, and that it's something that doesn't discriminate. And sometimes I'll tell people, you know, I've struggled with body shame most of my life. And some people kind of go, oh, what do you know about body shame? And it's like, it doesn't discriminate. You know, it was real for me. It was a lot of what I focused on my whole life, was this dysmorphic idea of what I was, and recognizing that, you know, everybody experiences it in their own way. And what if we could liberate ourselves from that?
So I'm a big believer in find a coach that has gone through the journey that you're going through and that has solved it, so that you don't have to struggle like they did. Okay. And they're out there because they believe in what they do, because it worked. So I think Katharina would be a great person to reach out to if you're struggling with emotional eating and self-sabotage, and you're looking for a way out to break past that. So I really want to thank you so much for sharing really sharing your story. That's a lot to share, and I want to thank you for helping people get through that, right? And so I want to thank you for coming on the show. And how can they reach out to you? What's the best way?
Best way would be to go to my website, www www.personalevolution.ca.
Okay, and I'll put that in the show notes. And then, of course, I've got the program, Lose 20 Plus Pounds Within 90 Days. Without depriving, we must stop beating ourselves up. We can enjoy some of these foods that you love and some of the wine, because we can put them into your plan. It's just a way to do it so that you can get to your body in an easier way than starving and depriving and struggling. So
we love to drink some wine together and have some delicious
that's how we
meals.
met. So we can do it. You guys can do it too. So reach out to one of us or both of us, and we'd be happy to help. Thanks for joining in.
Thank you.